Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for attending this session. I'm really excited to be here. I'm also very grateful to the organizers for making it possible for all of us to meet in this way and talk about things that matter to us. My talk today is for all of you who are tired of bad API design choices, for all of you who want to write better API documentation, but you feel obstructed by broken processes. And although it's presented from the perspective of a technical writer, you don't have to be a technical writer to apply this advice or even understand the problem. And the problem is people are not making use of API definitions while designing their APIs. And if they did, the world would be a much better place. So how can a technical writer or anyone who cares about API design and documentation change that? That's what I'll talk about today. So my name is Ivana, and I'm a technical writer and translator from Croatia. I used to work at a software security company called Reversing Labs while I was writing this talk, but now I work at Redocly, which is so much more relevant for this conference and this topic because Redocly is literally in the business of API documentation and developer portals. So if you haven't heard of Redocly and you're looking for tools that fully support OpenAPI and Docs code, check it out or feel free to ask me about it after this talk or on Twitter anytime. So in this talk, I'm going to present some ideas, strategies, or just generally things that you can try to increase the adoption of the design-first approach in your company or developer community. Disclaimer, a lot of people are talking about this. It's a hot topic, and it's a good thing because we have an active exchange of ideas and experiences. But as a consequence, some of the things I'll talk about might not be particularly original or new to you. And also another disclaimer, this talk is not about technical details or tools or any particular API specification. There have been several great talks about this at previous API the Docs sessions, so definitely check them out if you're interested in more technical topics. I'll be talking about the processes and management changes and different approaches to communication. And obviously, I will not be promoting any solution as the one that fits everyone. You're free to pick and choose the advice and combine it and use whatever works for your situation. So, what's the point of this whole design first or spec first approach? Why do we even want to do this? Again, if you've been following the API documentation and design trends, you're already pretty familiar with all the benefits of this approach. Writing the API definition first and working on it instead of going straight to development brings the whole API lifecycle to another level. One great thing is that people can simultaneously work based on the same source of truth. So technical writers can start writing the docs immediately instead of waiting for the development to finish. And when we have an API definition, we can use it for so many things. We can use it for documentation, for testing, generating SDKs, running mock servers. We can share the API definition with developer communities to get early feedback. And we can use the definition for validation and contract testing to protect from introducing breaking changes to the API. You can also use the API definition to get feedback from non-developers because it's human readable and people don't need to know anything about code to understand how an API works. Or you can auto-generate an early version of reference docs from the definition and have people read and comment on that. So if there are so many benefits and we all know about them, why are people not following this approach? There can be many reasons, and sometimes a lot of convincing is necessary. So the question comes up, who is going to do this? It's obviously not the job of a technical writer, but I believe it's in your best interest, especially if the amount of APIs you're supposed to document is constantly increasing. So instead of waiting for a hero, you can be the hero to lead the change. So let's imagine a role-playing game where we'll make you, our hero, stronger by equipping you with different items. And let's say this game, as any other great RPG, begins with a challenging quest. So one day you get an email from your CEO that looks something like this. He's seen that one of your competitors has this Swagger thing, and he wants you to make the same thing for your APIs. Yeah, all 120 of them, and your budget is 0. So as any other great hero, you say, yes, I'll do it. You rise to the challenge and you start on this quest. And that's when the skeletons start coming out. As you keep digging deeper, you discover all kinds of problems that are either related to the fact that your company has 0 API definitions available to customers, or to the fact that the API design process doesn't include writing API definitions at all. And the design process is more like people write a wish list of what the API should have in a Word document, and then they send it around. Or they have a Confluence page with 30 people editing it at the same time, making all kinds of changes. And then the version of the API that actually gets developed is something totally different. Or you can have a situation where not even the developers know where the docs are for the internal APIs. So they come to you, the technical writer, asking if you know, but you don't know. And you don't even know what the new API you're supposed to document looks like, because you still don't have access to it. And then it just gets worse and nobody's happy. But still the business somehow moves forward. And that's where our API hero starts taking things into her own hands and decides that she wants things to change and to make people happy. And this idea is noble, as a true hero should be, and it will benefit the entire company, not just your documentation team. So how do we sell people on this idea of spec-first API design? One of the things you can try is framing it as a business problem, which it actually is. If customers are asking for something you can't deliver, if the development is not achieving goals in time, it's not just a documentation problem. It's something that needs to be dealt with on a higher level. And you can try to get buy-in from managers by comparing and presenting what the competition has and showing how your plans to implement spec-first design align with the overall business goals and roadmaps. It's also wise to treat this as a proper project. So assign responsibilities, agree on success metrics, how you're going to measure the progress of the projects, what the milestones are going to be, etc. And in this approach, you're relying a lot on support from upper management, but make sure this plan doesn't come across as an agenda you're trying to push on other teams. The point here is to make sure everyone is on the same page, that everyone agrees this is a problem you should all tackle together. A slightly different approach is being the teacher, the source of wisdom, becoming the go-to subject matter expert on API definitions and specifications. This way you build trust and people will come to you for your expertise, which opens up space for collaboration where it may not have existed before. So instead of going to the management and talking about the business side of this problem, you can go to the people who actually work with the APIs and show them how API definitions can make their life easier. And with this approach, you can organize training sessions and workshops, and instead of just telling people how awesome API definitions are, you can actually show them how the tools work and what they can do with them. You can also highlight the benefits of versioning these API definitions in Git, for example, and show them how the definitions can be treated just like code. And also tell them about the concept of single sourcing, how it's just the one thing they need to write instead of 3 or 5 or however many things. So the goal here is to raise awareness of what API definitions are capable of, and show people that it's nothing scary or complicated, so that they'll be more open to accepting it. But this is where the real magic happens. When you equip the scroll of automation, you are demonstrating the power of automation with API definitions. This builds up on the approach of educating people and showing them different tools, but also goes one step further and shows them how those tools can integrate into existing pipelines and make things faster and easier. You can also show them how to work with linters and style guides, how to develop their own rules that will check the API definitions and ensure consistency across the board. So the big idea here is reusability of the API definition. You write it once and then reuse it for a bunch of different purposes. And by showing this, you can get support from other teams, not just API developers. For example, QA engineers, testing teams, they can be a really valuable ally, and make sure to include them in all discussions and demo sessions you'll be having. The point of this strategy is to strengthen the belief that API definitions can really bring value to the whole API lifecycle, and that it's not just something they're doing to help you, the documentarian, but something that multiple teams can benefit from. This strategy can be useful if you expect to be met with a lot of resistance, or if you're already experiencing some resistance. The shield is to protect you from taking negative feedback personally, and to instead receive it with empathy and understanding other people's perspectives. So what you want to do here is try to understand why they don't want to cooperate, why they are against the spec-first design process. Because when you think about it, it's not like they don't already design anything at all. Whatever their current process might be, they must have some starting point, some kind of requirement defined in one way or another. So your angle here is to convince them it would be better if those starting points and requirements were written in a standardized, reusable format. Also, try to figure out how much of this resistance is actually towards the specific tooling and API definitions versus how much of it is just acceptance of the status quo. And developers may have good arguments against a new approach that you're not even aware of, some technical obstacles. So it's important to listen to that. It's also important to avoid creating an atmosphere of us versus them. If you have successfully presented the lack of API definitions as a company-wide problem, then you should all be working together and you're all the same team on the same side, even if your ideas for achieving this goal might differ. Resistance to change is often just fear, fear of having to work harder or work more, fear of the unknown tools, fear of feeling incompetent while working with these new tools. And you don't want people to feel threatened by this change you're trying to introduce, or to make them feel like it will just be more work for them that benefits someone else but doesn't give them anything in return. So to convince them, you'll have to prove that you will be there working alongside them, that you are all on the same side, and that their daily workflows will not be negatively affected. It's also important to highlight this whole process as iterative and open to feedback and change, so that people don't feel trapped by this new process that you're trying to introduce. And the next strategy is all about taking responsibility. I think other strategies we mentioned might be optional to some degree, but this one is mandatory, because as the API hero, you will obviously have to take charge and perhaps stretch outside of your comfort zone at times. So it's important to be aware of this and prepared for it, so that you can balance your other ongoing work and other projects. And for this, you will need full support from your documentation team, and especially your manager, who needs to help you prioritize tasks. Apart from already mentioned efforts to educate people and plan the whole project, as the API hero, you should also start actively participating in the current API design process. This will help you understand how it works, and you can observe in which areas they struggle and take notes of that to see how the spec-first approach can help them with those problematic areas. And if you can, it's also a great idea to attend conferences like this one, to collect real-life examples and inspiration from people who have done similar things. And of course, you can extend this by doing further research, coming up with examples and case studies you can use to support your arguments. When you have these examples, you can use them to drive your arguments and decisions, and this shows that you aim to be as objective as possible and gives you more credibility. Other things to try: you could organize debates or give people an opportunity to vote on different parts of this whole decision-making process, because it's important to make everyone feel included so they don't feel like they're being forced into this new design approach. And the point of this strategy is to show that you have data to back you up. It's also important to show that you're respectful of current and previous processes and ready to compromise in a healthy way with open communication that gives everyone a voice. So when our hero has equipped all these items, is she ready to start? We have identified the problem and everyone is in agreement that it needs to be solved. We have a plan, we have action items, we've selected the tools, and everyone has done their part in learning how to work with those tools. So it all sounds ideal, like nothing can go wrong, right? Well, not quite. This is what happened when our team tried to convince API developers to start writing API definitions first at Reversing Labs. So people often come to conferences with success stories. This isn't really one of those. It's more of a cautionary tale for what to watch out for if you decide to try something like this. As you can see in this timeline, a year passed since the project kicked off and the goal has not been achieved. There were some minor wins and milestones reached along the way, but the real change has not happened. And why it didn't work for us, it was mainly because it wasn't prioritized properly. From the beginning, it was treated more as a side project of the technical writing team than something the whole company should be focused on. In other words, we did not drink the potion of business acumen. In reality, only one person worked on this. At best, there were 3 people, and there was never a concerted effort to actually make it happen. In a way, we never actually left the proof of concept phase, and the project kept being pushed out, put on hold because of other tasks and priorities coming in as more urgent. And part of the problem was also the fact that the idea of technical writers joining API design sessions remained just that, an idea that was floated around, but nobody actually acted on it. So if we look at the things that didn't work, we can derive some more actionable lessons. And some of these things I already mentioned. The importance of being the one who leads the charge is pretty obvious, but it's not something that a single person can do, and it's not something that a single person should do. It has to be a whole company effort or cross-team effort. And you don't want to make people feel like they're on the opposite sides of something. Everyone needs to work together towards resolving this problem. And the second, the middle one, is perhaps what can make or break the entire deal. In our case, a lot of the communication happened through third parties. There was a lot of he said, she said, and I think that was the mistake. We should have communicated directly with all the stakeholders, because no one can really convey the passion you have for the project as well as you can. And it can sometimes come across as you trying to communicate with the developers through the managers, and that just introduces this split between us and them, which is wrong. And the last one can be a hard pill to swallow, but it's also part of what it means to be a leader and ultimately a hero, knowing when to step down, when to put things off for a later date. Sometimes you can get everyone on board and everyone's excited about this spec first idea, but it's really important to take a step back and objectively look at the whole company. the resources you have available, and then decide if it's really the best time to start working on this, or if it's better to take it slowly, more gradually, or completely put it off for another time when you have more people available to work on it. And yeah, so I have a quote that is a total cliche, but in many situations, and in this one, I believe it really rings true. So even if we didn't fully succeed in this particular case, I still firmly believe the spec-first approach to designing APIs is the way to go. And trying to make this change is definitely worth it. And I would do it again, just differently. So if you have been in a similar situation, I encourage you to try different approaches and look for better allies. And those allies don't always have to be inside your organization or community. Write the Docs and API the Docs are wonderful places full of fantastic resources, great people from all over the world. They can help you with their advice and lift you up if you ever start feeling like you're not good enough. Personally, they've helped me many times, probably without even knowing it, and I probably wouldn't even be here giving this talk if it wasn't for them. So in a way, all these people are my heroes, and that includes all of you here today. So the point here is kind of obvious, right? Any change is difficult, but with the right combination of tools and strategies, you can raise awareness of the spec-first approach and of its benefits and motivate people to join your cause. Sometimes it's enough to just spark their curiosity to get the ball rolling. If you've tried this before and it didn't really go as planned, I would like you to try again and then tell your story, write about it, write a blog post, or come here to API the Docs and give a talk about it. And make sure to wear your hero cape while doing it. Thank you.